Okay, guys, for those of you who are who are logging in a little early, I just thought I would get today's live stream started early. I know this is a late live stream. Normally, we do these at 5:30, and today, just because it was Tuesday, of course, inconveniently scheduled during a presidential debate, then didn't seem to make sense to have the live stream, Ask Me Anything kind of live stream scheduled at that time. So I thought I'd wait till after that debate was over, assuming many of you probably watched that debate or at least were following it somewhat online. And then I figured I'd schedule our live stream tonight after that. Unfortunately, that also means that this live stream is going to be scheduled the same time that the Reichert and Ferguson debate is going on. So I'm going to have to go back and watch that myself so that I can see exactly how that one goes. But I did watch the presidential debate, and I'll give you some thoughts on that as we kind of jump into the program here today. And again, I don't usually get so involved on the federal side of things, but today I'll do that, and a little bit at least as it applies to this debate, and just see how it goes. One thing, too, I just wanted to point out real quick for those who are kind of following Washington state issues in regards to the debates. It does appear from what I'm reading that there's going to be two governor debates with Reichert and Ferguson. One is going to be the one that's happening here probably in just a few minutes. It'll start in just a few minutes. There's no audiences for this debate. I can't remember which media organizations are putting it on, but they'll be live streaming it, and then you can go back and look at it historically. And then there's another one, I believe 8 days later, out in Spokane. And that you'll have to be part of the one of the business associations out there, I think, to be in the debate audience. But again, I believe that'll also be televised, and there'll be videos about it everywhere. And so we'll see what kind of sound clips come out of that. The one thing, it's funny, after watching tonight's presidential debate, the one thing I'm going to point out is that unlike the what we thought was going to be the only presidential debate before with Biden, before they did the switcheroo and flipped Kamala Harris into that position instead. That was an unusual debate because the Biden Trump debate, because obviously the minute he walked out on stage, he appeared to be senile and out of, Biden appeared to be senile and have problems, and he clearly fell apart in that debate. And probably that was one of the more consequential presidential debates that we'll ever see in our lifetimes, where literally a presidential candidate blows up so bad at the debate that they yank him, political party and Democrat Party insiders yank him from his campaign, despite the fact that he had prevailed in the primary and got 14 million votes. The Democrats flushed the votes and their candidate down the drain, and then did a quick swap and put Kamala Harris in there instead, which is why we had the debate tonight. Generally speaking, and I don't know, if you've ever been, I've never been on a debate club, but I have done debates before. I've also moderated debates a few times, and there's I think everybody has a different style and a different way to approach debates. For those of you who have been on debate club, you know that there's a very way of being graded on the success of the debate that you have, and whether you lost that debate or not. And you're also supposed to, at least when you do debate club, from my friends that run in debate team, whether that's at the high school or college level, there's usually basic rules, like you have to be able to debate both sides of the issue, and there's technique and strategy and all that you would have. The one thing that always, whenever I see these political debates between presidential or just politicians and candidates like that, I'm sometimes impressed by probably it looks easy from the outside looking at him. You're thinking, why are you not completing that sentence, or why are you responding that way? We'll all be kind of judgmental about it, and we'll nitpick it a bit. there's also a tendency to look at things red team good, bad, blue team bad, or vice versa, depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on. I'll give you some of my opinions as we jump into this here, but I also recognize that many of you are going to be asking questions, probably have some commentary as well. If you do have a question, try to remember when you put it in there just to say @WeTheGovern. It'll stand out a little bit better. Many times when I've done these Q&As and asked me anything in the past, that there's a lot of commentary that goes on between people, and that's great, but for me to get to the questions that are actually being asked and try to do my best to answer them, just try to do that so that it kind of stands out as I'm kind of looking through the questions. It'll be a little bit easier for me to spot them. One quick point I was going to make beyond the fact that I'm interrupting the presidential debate right this minute, or I should say the gubernatorial debate between Reichert and Ferguson. I will point out that I believe that I'm going to be emceeing the Washington State Republican annual dinner that they have this coming up Friday, September 13th. Riley Gaines is the main speaker there, and should be a good group of people. It's in Bellevue at the Hyatt Regency, 7 to 9 p.m. I think you can go online and register at the Washington State Republican website. General reception starts at 5:30. I'm going to try to be there at 5:30. So if you're there too, look at, find me and say hi. Come on up and say hi if you watch my live streams or you watch the videos or you hate what you're hearing me say or whatever it is that you want to tell me. But do come on up in person, and I always appreciate getting feedback from people who do watch the videos and watch my channel, and particularly those of you who watch the live stream. So getting back to the presidential debate tonight, I don't find either Kamala Harris or Trump actually to be particularly good in this format. At least it doesn't. At least that's just my opinion, and this is just stylistically. One of the things that was interesting, really, between the two of them, when you were hearing some of the pre-debate commentary, people were mentioning that. Trump was not really doing much prep before this debate, and Kamala was, sequestered and managed to have like a Trump impersonator there trying to play Trump on the other side and probably trying to spend a lot of time doing debate prep. I certainly don't doubt the need for Kamala Harris to probably do that kind of prep because I know in unscripted moments, she's actually particularly bad, even for a politician. If you've been around a lot of politicians in the past, you'll, to be honest, most of them, and it really doesn't matter which party they're in, most people who have some experience in public office, they do tend to be pretty good on their feet most of the time. If they're reasonably decent at retail politics, they're going to be pretty good at talking and just coming up and talking to people in public or dealing with a lot of odd issues and odd things that come up. If you're campaigning, you always have hecklers, or I won't say always, but you'll oftentimes have hecklers. You'll have people who come up and try to put you in awkward situations or throw gotcha questions at you. And you'll also be surrounded by people who love you, and so there's this mixed bag, and you're going to be constantly dealing with odd situations when you're out there. I've been around politicians a lot, at least at the local and state level, and even congressmen, and you'll see them how they navigate those kind of situations. And most of them, especially if they've been in there for a little while, they tend to develop a basic skill set that's pretty good. And I think from everything that I've been told, I think Trump's probably pretty good in those types of settings, where people just come up to him randomly, or you're in social settings, or a lot of the typical settings that a politician would find themselves in. Kamala Harris, by all appearances, seems to do very poorly in that type of environment. But a debate isn't that. A debate has rules, and as a debate moderator before, one of the things you're kind of looking at is are the people in the debate, following the rules? That's usually what the moderator's trying to do. What still strikes me as weird with these presidential debates is where the moderators are essentially inserting themselves into the format in some way and trying to fact check or intervene on the whatever the person has said. When I did a couple of limited, it's hard to really call them debates, but it's the closest format I could imagine when I ran for office years ago. And the most that I remember them really doing, a moderator doing, would just be the types of questions that they would take, and that was skewing the results, because the questions they were asking might be intended to benefit your opponent. The hard thing is, once you're at this presidential level debating, and I'm looking at this, obviously ABC News, they're biased and they're supporters of Kamala Harris, and you can see how they did that. But their fact checks were always on Trump, and they didn't bother to even prep any kind of fact checks on Kamala Harris, even though there were a bunch of things that she said that were just as false, and probably far more false, actually, in a lot of ways, and debunked long ago, and everybody knows they're not true. And she threw them out there knowing that nobody was going to fact check her. And, that always helps her. But frankly, that's not a surprise. Nobody could possibly imagine ABC News doing a, completely unbiased debate. It wasn't as bad as I kind of thought it would be. So I think that probably worked a little bit to Trump's benefit, and that they weren't just extremely over-the-top bias in the way I've seen him do in the past. And Kamala's prep was probably very necessary for her. Otherwise, I think it was going to be a disaster. But I wouldn't say this is like a debate where one person, clearly has some big outstanding victory versus the other. Both sides are going to say their candidate did great. Stylistically, one of Trump's ways of speaking that always bothers me is his tendency to cut off sentences and to, incomplete thoughts as he's kind of going along, which is not a great public speaking format that I think would basically make it easier for the public, especially somebody just tuning in that doesn't really know anything, to get much value out of the debate. If you're a really engaged and person in politics, and you understand what his shorthand discussion is about, you'll appreciate it a little bit more. But what happens is, I think you lose a lot of the audience who might otherwise be interested in what Trump has to say. Frankly, the only reason people are probably tuning into these debates is to see if there's any big train wreck. And I didn't see a huge train wreck here. Trump had a couple of good one-liners. I thought the run spot run, analysis for the plan that Harris supposedly has proposed is funny, only because for 5-6 weeks there was no plan at all. And you're talking about the sitting vice president who's been in that position, who has bragged, at least up until a few weeks ago, that she was the last person in the room and really very much in charge or somehow involved in these issues. And now suddenly coming out, it's almost like she's pretending that she hasn't been there making these decisions or involved in them for the past 3.5 years. I find that interesting. But, that's what she would have to do. And so there really wasn't anything terribly surprising, I don't think, about this debate. And I think in that case, it's going to be very much like most presidential debates, which generally don't really produce I know they like to hype up the drama, but I don't think that this debate's going to really change a lot of people's minds one way or the other, for the most part. Now, as I speak, all the talking heads and everybody's going to come out, and they're going to come up with some kind of spin on who they think won the debate or who they think got far out ahead. But to me, it didn't seem like it was that different. If I was Trump at the closing arguments, I would have spent time talking about my policies for people. And it's one of the challenges that I've seen with candidates. I do a lot of local political events, and I'm often introducing. Sometimes I'm the MC at these events. As I'm going to be at the coming up state Republican Party dinner this Friday. A lot of times I'm just there as another speaker, but I'll hear other politicians speak. And one of the things that astounds me frequently is, and Republicans I think are particularly fail in this regard, is Republican candidates for office will oftentimes get up there to talk about their resume and not so much on their policies, plans, or what they expect to do. And I think that's a mistake. Really, most people, you want to have a place where somebody can find out what you've done. And there's a lot of truth that if you don't promote yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. Okay, I'll buy that. But you need to spend a sizable percentage, and it should be the majority of time in which you're speaking in public, I think, explaining what your policies and plans are for people, and try to be as clear and specific and targeted to the audience that you have. Now, that's really difficult if you're running for president. People who love Trump are going to love his performance of the debate. People who support Harris are going to love hers. And everybody will be spitting that over all the time. But if I think Trump missed an opportunity as closing arguments to do a much better job going out and presenting his vision. I don't find Harris to be a believable person at all. Her time when she promotes herself as the district attorney, one of the things, I don't know why people don't point this out, but she had 1,100 criminal convictions thrown out because of her incompetence as the district attorney in that office, with handling chain of custody and dealing with evidentiary chain of custody and all kinds of other issues. It was horrible. I mean, her tenure in office before she even got to vice president was not stellar. It was unimpressive and mediocre at best, and horrible in many ways. And so, it's amazing that you can get such an empty suit really promoted with no significant accomplishments all this way. But, in this case, I think, and the other thing that was weird too, the one odd thing, and I found this to be an odd issue. I mean, this was clearly just done to bait Trump, but talking about people, encouraging people to go to a Trump rally and then telling them what you think you're going to see at that Trump rally. That was an interesting approach for Kamala to take. I didn't, I'm not sure that that's what people's experience of a Trump rally is going to be like. And so that was just a weird thing for her to focus on. And what she was really trying to do, of course, was bait Trump into arguing about his rally size or how great his rallies are or whatever. Clearly, Kamala spent a lot of time getting, organized ahead of time with a lot of talking points and kind of some basic phrases. And it's good if you have the ability, I think, to memorize those as a politician running for office. But regardless, the bigger question right now, I'm just following up on this, is the big spin that's going to come for the next period of time. The fact that there probably won't be another presidential debate. Kamala survived it without showing signs of dementia, cackling, or falling off the stage or doing something weird. And Trump pretty much performed as Trump would be expected to perform. Trump is not an unknown entity. And I think that's one of those benefits that he has as a guy running for president right now. He's already been in office for 4 years in the past. He's been in the limelight for decades. Most people have their opinion of Trump already. And from a policy standpoint, if you care about liberty and freedom at all, right, it's very funny that Harris would bring up any kind of liberty and freedom angle at all. And I know they're doing this because in polling, it's probably something that resonates with people. But her basic policies and the people with whom she associates and her belief system in the past is clearly designed to destroy freedom and liberty for everybody all along the way. She supports censorship. She doesn't want energy independence. She loves higher taxes, spends money terribly. Clearly is making the country more dangerous, more likely to go to war than we would be otherwise. I mean, there's no doubt all these policies are firmly attached to her program, and that's why you don't hear them talk about any of them generally when they're going to get up there as a politician. Trump, if I was to critique Trump on anything, one of the things I would say is he's definitely not aware of the dangers of big government as much as he should be. I would hope that after his last experience, he would be a little bit more, but in comparison between the two of them, Trump is still the preferable person to get into that office. If for no other reason, then I feel like he would at least, do something to downsize or at least slow down some of the horribly abusive policies that the big government bureaucrats have been pushing on us. And perhaps he'd be far less likely to get us into war. I mean, that's what I would presume based on what I've seen in the past. But this debate isn't going to probably shift the needle one way or the other too much, I don't think, in this case. Now, more interesting to me, and I can't comment on it too much, but since it's going on right this minute, probably 12 minutes into the governor's debate that's going on right now, and if people want to add comments about this, I am curious to watch that debate. I'll be interested in watching it probably either late tonight or tomorrow, and we can talk about it next week. Or if you see me at the Friday dinner, come on up and talk to me then. But I would have to imagine Ferguson is a good debater. It's been my, observation. He clearly has no attachment to truth or honesty, but he's a pretty decent communicator most of the time. So I have to imagine that he's got some level of debate skills that would probably be more refined than Reichert as a candidate. Now, if you remember Inslee, when he's had his debates in the past, I mean, he either lied a lot or he was just a bumbling guy. Even with the cult debate, I thought Inslee did really terribly and in that debate. But gubernatorial races don't get the same kind of attention. Debates, won't get the same kind of attention. And so I doubt very many people are going to see it. Well, really, both campaigns are primarily going to be looking for sound bites. Ferguson tonight is going to pretend like he cares about law and order, even though everything in his career and history shows that your public safety is the lowest concern that he's ever had in public office, whereas enriching his friends and promoting his own personal campaign is really his highest priority. On public safety, he's the weakest, and that's going to be what I would guess that Ferguson's trying to promote in some way tonight during this debate with Reichert. He has to at least come out and pretend and lie and claim that he has done something for public safety, even though he's done nothing. And in fact, he's made us a lot less safe in this country as Attorney General. Reichert probably will not be as well versed on minutia associated with the governor's office the way that I would believe that Ferguson would be as a longtime insider inside of an executive office in Olympia. He's going to know a lot more information intuitively, and just with his experience with the bloat of big government in Washington State, he's going to be able to kind of talk about a bunch of issues, and I suspect that the media will tailor questions that play to Ferguson's strengths in that case. So we'll see. Listen, it's good to have a debate. Whether candidates are good debaters or not, you still learn something about them when they have these debates. I've enjoyed moderating in the past, and unlike the media that you saw tonight at ABC, it's never crossed my mind to try to fact check a candidate up there running for office or who's debating. All I really want to make sure is they're responding within their windows of time, that the timekeepers are managing it properly, and that nobody else is disrupting the candidates during the debate. That's really been my priority when I've moderated in the past. So we'll see how it goes, and that'll be an interesting, feedback to get to. With that, I'm just going to go right into your questions because I know you have some. There's a number of people watching here tonight, so let's dig into them. First question that I see here, and it's going to be posted here as I answer these questions, or do my best to attempt to answer them. Cristiano Suzuki, too much politics for one day. I will watch later, but my question would be, what is more important, majority in Congress or power at the executive branch? My argument on that is generally who controls the executive branch, for the most part. And this is actually true at both the state and the federal level. And whether it's right or wrong, the tendency has been in American politics over the last 100 years to shift much greater power into the executive's branch, whether that's at the governor's office in most states or, of course, at the presidential level, at the federal level. And they've got a lot more power, I think, than they did 100 years ago, for example, whereas I think Congress has gradually whittled away, and our representative branches in most states have tended to whittle away their power. They do this in a couple of ways. They being the legislative branch of government, they've lost their power because they've outsourced a lot of the decision-making process to a bloated bureaucracy, which is run by the executive. And they do this with horrifically written rules and ordinances, essentially, that give a lot of leeway for bureaucracies to invent and make up the rules that go along or interpret them as they see fit. That leads to both legal battles in the future, abusive bureaucracies that are out of control, and the legislature saying, hey, it's not our fault. We gave it to them. Well, essentially, most of those government agencies report to their executive branch, which is the governor at state level, president at a federal level. And that has given them a lot more, them being the executive level branch of government, in both cases, state and federal, gives them a lot more ability to control policy by how they manage those agencies and those bureaucracies, regardless of whatever dumb law was passed by the legislative branch. Now, sometimes Congress steps up and will do something. They'll intervene. I actually think in the 90s, under Newt Gingrich, the Congress actually made some unusual improvements in the trajectory of government in some ways because they got unified, organized, and they focused on this. The contract with America, I thought, was actually pretty successful in a couple of ways, sort of reducing or at least slowing the bloat of government for the first time in ever, and forcing certain types of welfare reform, which was actually pretty significant, restraining spending, which was also significant. And some of the other reforms they did at that time was pretty unusual. I mean, that was an unusual level of Congress actually standing up for itself. But most of the time, the general trajectory, especially with executive orders now, and you see Governor Inslee and others governors abusing their power substantially during the COVID chaos that they caused with just idiotic and terrible policies. That has given the executive branch just a lot more power. And so I think it's more important, on balance, to control the executive branch. But that's where it goes. Did you see the poll? Ben Garrett, good question here. Did you see the poll that came out this last week? It's Ferguson getting 48% and Reichert getting 44.5% statewide with about 7.6% undecided. Does this mean Bob is in serious trouble? And I would say Ferguson is at risk, and that's the best way to explain this. Ferguson's primary numbers were not good. They're not impressive. Remember, it's a divided field, and Ferguson is the anointed one from the Democrats. So, and anointed means anointed. That means all of the insiders, in theory, are basically lining up behind him. The opposition was fractured and fractious, which is a good way to describe it. And whether that's Mullet running as a Democrat, who really is the anti-Ferguson, whether that's Byrd supporters, who are running, or whether that's Reichert, or frankly, almost anybody else, a lot of that was just an anti-Ferguson vote. Can they consolidate, come together, and push back against Ferguson? Now, regardless of what these polls are, and I think polls do get manipulated in Washington State as well as any place else, it does show that Reichert is within striking distance, but he basically he is the underdog in this race, and he has to hit everything exactly on the money. And Republicans usually just screw up so much that their screw-ups eventually snowball into making it very difficult for them to prevail in a general election. Ferguson's done polling, and he knows that he is unpopular with a sizable enough percentage that it makes him scared a little bit. And Ferguson, his only priority is power, right? He doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about what happens to you or anyone else in the state. His own power is the only priority he's ever had, and that's been pretty consistent from the time he was on the King County Council till now. I mean, it's never really changed for this guy, which is why there's so many Democrat insiders that hate him and really don't like him at all, regardless of whether they say they're on his side out there. They really don't like him. I don't know how some of those people would respond to a poll like this. I think they'd pretend to say they support him, and they wouldn't. Reichert doesn't have that type of baggage, but he's also coming out of a situation where he'd been retired from both Congress and even further long ago in his position as a law enforcement officer, as King County Sheriff. So he's got a little bit harder path to go down. However, this is for a Republican at this stage of the game. This is a pretty good showing. And at this point, as we just saw in the primary election, it all depends on turnout. And if there's enough people that will turn out, especially in that 7.6% undecided, if they're likely to decide, I don't want the abusive, crazy attorney general who's done everything he can to put violent sex predators in our neighborhood, if they decide they don't want that guy, and they decide to shift to Reichert just for a change of pace, that gives him the opening to get in there as governor. Sometimes I feel like Republicans at this level win by accident, but and that's not fair for me to say, but I also have very low respect for most of the Republican consultants that I've seen in operation, especially at this level, so we'll see. This is kind of another question, Ben, you asked three questions here in a pretty good, consistent way, so I'll answer each of them in order here. What should Dave Reichert say or do during the debate tonight and next week to win over the undecided voters and give himself the best shot of being our next governor? I think one thing you have to do in this case, when you're the underdog, you have to definitely go after Ferguson and point out the deception and the lies that he's consistently had on a lot of these issues, his lack of transparency, his hostility to public safety, and Ferguson's just general record of supporting and concealing corruption in government. I think that's one thing you have to emphasize. At the same time, you also have to emphasize, listen, I'm coming in here to make you safer, to improve the economy, to stop trying to harm the people of Washington State and the ability for us to have jobs and careers and raise families here. And that contrast is all you can do. I mean, really, you have to stay focused on that. I don't know if there's any like special phrase or catchphrase you're going to say there, but I think it's important to do that. The next thing, Ben, good question here again. I'm pretty sure that I agree with the notion that Reichert or any Republican statewide candidate needs to be at or above 40% in King County, which is what he means in King County. As McKenna got 38% there, and he lost by 1.4%. And I think this is generally the rule of thumb. Republicans need to get about 40% of the votes. Common belief, anyway, that from a mathematical standpoint, they need to get about that rate in order to win. I think you can, if you have good turnout in other counties, you can get into 39, 38%. Frankly, McKenna was quite close. McKenna had other screw-ups that occurred in his campaign and tended to just chase away the conservatives who would have supported him, I think, and they didn't vote for him. And how did that work for those conservatives? Pretty poorly, because that's how we got Inslee in there. But that was a screw-up on the McKenna campaign at the time, because I think Inslee was particularly vulnerable during the 2012 election. And McKenna's campaign was pretty well organized. Probably for, to be fair, since the 2004 race, for governor, when Rossi won twice and then Gregoire won on that third recount, the magical third recount, and all the drama that we've discussed about that in the past, McKenna really probably had the best organized, just practical, boots on the ground, structured campaign that I've at least witnessed in the state. So in 20 years, I would say McKenna's campaign probably was the most organized, the way it launched and was put together. But you also had levels of incompetence at the consultant level that sometimes just boggle the imagination. You can't even believe that there's people that incompetent as consultants. And unfortunately, there's a lot of them that jump in and help Republicans. So that was an interesting one. So we'll see how it goes. But that target in King County, that's roughly accurate, I think. Again, the distribution in some of these other counties, particularly when you look at King, Pierce, and Snohomish, you really need to be around that 50% in those. If you take those three counties, you really need to be high 40s at least between those three. So those are the three big counties. Thunderstriker 303, thanks for your regular commentary here. Hi, Glenn, I'm finally back home. I had such a great time in Seattle. Thought it was cold and rainy down there. Yes, it usually is. It just wasn't when you were here. I wanted to ask you, would you post a video, perhaps another live stream for the 23rd anniversary of September 11th, which is tomorrow? That'd be great. Please do it. Nope, I'm not going to get a chance to probably post. Well, I'll have a video, but it won't be about September 11th. I will make a quick commentary, just an update on September 11th, since that is tomorrow. And that has a lot of meaning to me, partially because I went to college in New York City. I was living there, actually, as a college student when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time, which people have kind of forgotten about. I used to run to the World Trade Center because I was on the cross-country and track team, and that was one of our destination runs. We'd leave the campus and run to the south part of the island and then actually catch the subway back. You only do that in New York. But the other thing is, I used to give student tours or prospective student tours to the top of the World Trade Center. I don't know, I probably did about 30 or 40 times. It was anybody who's attended a college that is and been on a sports team knows that their coaches are trying to recruit other students to come to that college. Columbia didn't give athletic scholarships, so they had to be able to get in academically, but the coaches are still trying to get people to run track and cross country. And so frequently what I did, starting my sophomore year, so I did for about 3 years, I was one of the students who would take the parents or the prospective student around New York City and take them on tours. Now, the subways weren't always great, especially if you're an out-of-towner, and so I would usually get one of the school vans and I would drive them around the city and show them New York City, and then I would go to the World Trade Center. Was one of the most common places that I'd go, and I'd take them to the top of the World Trade Center. Just like I took my grandma up there and my mom and multiple grandparents, actually, and other people over the years. And so I went to the top of the World Trade Center a lot because of that mainly. And it was a place that you would go on dates or something, when I was in college. It would be a common place to go to. So it means a lot, when the World Trade Center crashed. It wasn't just some disembodied place that I'd been to once on a vacation or saw. I'd been to the top of that building many, many times, just not that many months before it actually came crashing down. So, that's it. It just means different things to different people, I think, when they see it. And here we are so many years later, and I don't think we've learned really much of our lessons at all since that time. The next question here, how is the Public Lands Commissioner recount doing? Well, my video that I recorded today, which I'm hoping launches tomorrow, might not launch for 2 days, depending on how quickly it gets up, is that basically Sue Cal Peterson did pick up some votes after the recount. She actually picked up 6. Up the Grove picked up 4, so the net benefit was 2 to her. The official Secretary of State recount had her close the gap slightly, but not enough to necessarily make it happen. But weirdly enough, and I do think this was weird, and just an amateur hour, bizarre move by the Sue Cal Peterson camp, and that she conceded before the final recount was done. And that's particularly weird because one of the things that should have probably happened is you wouldn't concede, because there were so many problems that were uncovered in the recount process, a couple of very distinct ones, but most importantly in King County, that it would have justified being a little bit more engaged to pass the so-called recount process. Now, my video deals with this a lot more thoroughly than I want to, because I don't have the time really to deal with it this live stream right now. So look forward to the video when you see it come out, and I'll give you the full update. But technically at this point in time, it's Dave Up the Grove that's going to be versus Jamie Herrera for Public Lands Commissioner, and we were very, very close, just a few votes away from having 2 Republicans in that position, which would have guaranteed a Republican in a state executive position for Public Lands Commissioner. So we would have had somebody in there who at least didn't believe that managing public lands meant to turn them into tinderboxes and burn them all down, which is Dave Up the Grove's core platform as a Democrat, because there's no way you can be a Democrat and run that office without that as your platform. It's a weird dynamic. It's been there since Goldmark, and Hillary Franz the same way. In making the public lands burn by policy, by a direct result of your really stupid and foolish policy. That seems to be their core way of dealing with public lands, and then every summer it'll just be a roll of dice whether that section of forest survives another administration with that approach. So we're going to have a very clear distinction. Now, I'm going to point out that there were 3 candidates in the race early on for Public Lands Commissioner that clearly don't believe in burning down the public forest as part of public policy. It was Herrera Butler, it was Sue Cal Peterson, and there was almost no difference really between the policies. And Kevin Vandeweghe, who was actually a Democrat legislator out of the Peninsula, 24th Legislative District, which is heavy timberland. And so he also really had very similar policies. Those 3 people, if they were being voted for because you believed that their policies made sense, the consolidated votes that went for those 3 would be enough to get Herrera Butler over the top. She'd win, assuming the percentages stay roughly the same into the general. But the battle's going to be between a King County councilman who's sold to soul to the lefties and the greenies, who seem to like having the public forest burn up, and Jamie Herrera Butler, who will probably believe that good forest management practices is a better approach. I mean, it's a stark contrast, regardless of what you feel about anything else from the policy standpoint. But that's what we're looking forward to in November. That's how it all turned out, and we'll just see where it goes. Let's see, Duck Farmer, you had a comment here about how Kamala must have practiced the questions a lot. First time that she ever spoke strongly. Yeah, it's probably the best I've seen her do in public. But if you've looked at actual videos of her, when she's given a script that she knows well enough, usually she can present it, reasonably well. I mean, Biden, one of the things you get, Biden was so bad, and he was obviously a dementia patient long ago, and the media was covering up for him, and obviously Democrats were covering up for his, disastrous situation that he represented there for a long time. And so anything in contrast to that's going to look better. And so I actually felt like she had an incredibly low bar to clear, and she was able to get over that at least. But of course, she's going to practice those. Frankly, any good politician probably going into especially such a high-stakes debate like this is going to have a reasonable set of statements or things you're going to say before you go into it. Reagan was actually very well known for memorizing pithy commentary and sound bites and funny stories when he would do his public presentations, and he did a very good job of doing that. Part of that came out of his acting background, and it amazes. I mean, you would think that with Trump's acting background that he had on The Apprentice and other things, that he would probably be a little bit more set up to do that. But just his style of delivery is very different. And so for the first time in, many years, you have somebody on the Democrat side that isn't, Dementia Joe just kind of running around up there. So that's how it goes. However, it was an interesting dynamic. And listen, it's where it's at. I'm sure everybody's spinning it already as we're speaking. Down here, Ben Garrett, what do you make of the new vote no on I-2117 ad? Seems like a big lie to me. Of course it is. Plus, it says it's sponsored by Bill Gates, a billionaire, at the bottom of the ad. Yeah. Listen, Bill Gates and all the billionaires, they love these big taxes. They want you and I and everybody around us to be the peasants out there who simply support their billionaire lifestyle. They always have. I mean, there's an elitist mindset that tends to come into that. And that's why they join forces to support big government types like, Inslee and his Climate Commitment Act, which is really just a big kickback scheme, including to some of the nonprofits that Bill Gates supports as well. So it's a completely self-serving thing. So, of course, he's going to do that. Everybody knew that when we were trying to take down some of these taxes that simply jack up the cost of living, that every billionaire, every little insider grifting class group is going to step up and try to oppose it, and that's what Bill Gates is doing. And that fits with what he's saying. The conservative thinking mom, this is an interesting comment. I just knew this was going to happen. As soon as I saw Trump mention something about Springfield, Ohio, I believe, where they got overwhelmed with a bunch of Haitian refugees were all dumped. Why that would happen in a small city like that. But anyway, they dumped a whole bunch there. And as this happened, if you have a country like Haiti where basically starvation is the rule and the normal situation, of course, you move them suddenly, you dump them into this place, and they see the geese and the ducks in the local park. They aren't going to treat them like pets. They're going to treat them like food. And it's not a particularly unusual surprise that they're going to go out there and eat the ducks and the geese. And people are offended by that, understandably so. What I thought was funny was the media, pretending like that's not happening by calling the city manager of that city. What do you think? I mean, I can't imagine a worse person to contact in a given city than the city manager. I mean, they are usually the most corrupt person involved in the entire bureaucracy or establishment of any given city. They are so political, and they have to put on a happy face no matter how bad things are in their city, because that's what they do. That's their job. They're in charge of the disaster in which they supposedly are running. Now, they blame the politicians if they can, but generally the city manager is the worst person to call. And it was so funny that, of course, I just knew that was set up for him, that they would say, oh, that's not true, it's not happening. And yet there's plenty of photos online that have been posted by people who actually live in that city and actually have to deal with this, unlike the city manager. And they're posting pictures of people, these Haitian refugees, killing the pet or the animals in the park. And, I haven't seen any photos of the cats or dogs yet, but, if that stuff comes out, it'll be classic. Ben, you've asked a lot of questions, but nevertheless, you're doing a good job making it easier for me to spot your questions here. What are the chances that the GOP lawsuit against King County is successful for Lands Commissioner race? Do you think they have a legitimate argument? Keep in mind, their lawsuit, it clearly impacts the public lands commissioner race, is mostly about the omni-ballot scam program that King County used for rehab ballots, unlike every other county. The law is pretty clear. I think it's very obvious that King County was illegal. I'm not, we'll see how it affects, again, we just have to see where it goes. The judges in Washington State are particularly corrupted by the process, and they're afraid of going against the established political class in most cases. So maybe they roll the dice and they actually get an honest judge. That'd be such a shocking, really rare example of amazingness if that actually occurred. And then, of course, you have to navigate the appeal process. But it's always better to win the first stage. So we'll see where they go. It could impact. It would definitely, if the omni ballot. Again, I talked about this in the video that you'll see coming up before. If that omni ballot, which remember is a third-party entity funded by grants from the government with no transparency or ability to audit anything that they do, basically running a part of the election process completely illegally with zero oversight, no controls, no security functions, and using that process to validate or rehab ballots. That statistically, if those ballots were thrown out because they were not accepted, so remember these are rejected ballots, and so people going online and supposedly signing for those people, if those ballots were thrown out, there's no way Up the Grove would have made it through, right? It would clearly be 2 Republicans on the final ballot, but we'll see. Then let's keep going down there. Who came up? Yeah, Nathan, this is funny. Whoever came up, now this is funny. Okay, so whoever came up with the idea of associating Trump with ducklings and kittens is a brilliant, these memes are golden. Yeah, and of course. I mean, obviously the memes kind of speak for themselves, but I don't know, it's very funny. We'll just see where it goes. There's another question here about, do you think the debate could have made a difference if one candidate had a clear blowout win, which didn't happen? Maybe, but that doesn't happen very often. People have been going back to televised debates since the 1960 Nixon-Kennedy debate, right? Which was, the idea was the media spun it afterwards saying Nixon looked terrible, even though if you just listen to an audio file of that debate or a radio recording at the time, most people who listened to the radio recording felt that Nixon won the debate and that Kennedy lost. But those who saw the debate felt that Kennedy won and Nixon lost. That was a famous first televised presidential debate. The other debates that probably came out a little bit more, when Reagan was debating in '84 Mondale, and he had that, people were saying he was too old to run for office. And he had his quip, which, again, as politicians will, he had prepared this and was waiting for the right time, opportunity to launch this, where he came out and he said, would you use there was a question by the moderator, I think, would you use, do you think age has been brought up as an issue? What do you have to say about that? And Reagan saying something about, I will not use the youth and inexperience of my opponent against him in political campaigns. It was very funny, and everybody laughed, including Mondale, right? I mean, you couldn't help but laugh at that. And people oftentimes will say, well, that's the point when Mondale was totally put away. That was a 49-1 state victory, when Reagan had, frankly, the most overwhelming election in American history in recent times. I'm not sure there's anything that really compares to that. But I don't think that debate would have made a difference in that case with that type of an election result. But people will point to those things and say, okay, this made the difference. This is true. Tony, you point out, yes, Trump was debating the two moderators as well because they kept throwing, they're always going to be, it's ABC News. They can't be honest. It's impossible. But that's what's going on, and he knew that going into it. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. And many of you are mentioning that comments here. I'm going to keep going down to some questions. Let's see. Let's go to this. Guys, ask if you're just talking back and forth, that's great. I'm trying to find questions here. Kamala is pragmatic and will appeal to that very small group by saying what they want to hear. And what do you think? Of course, that's what she's doing. Really, I think they just do a lot of surveys. I think Democrats are much better at this than Republicans. They'll survey and segment people into little slices of groups that they appeal to using certain language, and then they'll, after the campaign, they'll advertise heavily into those groups saying, see, Kamala is the only person who wants you to have reproductive rights, and Trump wants to ban abortion forever, and all this. That's how they'll do it, and they'll figure, okay, we're going to get these this particular vote. Anyway, that's just how it goes. I'm going to keep going down here, guys. There's a lot of comments, but. And again, Kamala needs serious jail. There's all kinds of opinions people have out there. I think she's a terrible person to put in the Oval Office, but Anyway, that's just going down here. Let's see. Jason Fisher, hey Glenn, I hope you're doing awesome. What are your thoughts on Washington's 3rd congressional district race? Seems like all Democrat ads are on abortion. And that is right. I mean, I live in the 3rd congressional district. I'm in the north end of it, and that's the Southwest Washington congressional district. That's considered one of the most likely districts to flip from Democrat to Republican in Congress this cycle. At least it's the most at risk. Marie Glusenkamp, who's the incumbent congresswoman there, and I met her, and I've talked to her before, and I've had nothing but positive interaction personally with her in the past. My daughter got into the Air Force Academy, and as people know, if you've ever applied to the Air Force Academy, you're going to have a local congressional candidate, or your local congresswoman typically, or congressperson is going to be the one who appoints, is one of the appointers for that. And so I had, that you have a meeting down there with the other people that were appointed and got into different committees, and I had a chance to chat with her a little bit at that point in time. But I think that she didn't do that well in the primary. If I was in Glusenkamp's, and that's a very Republican district. It's just hard you can't deny that. It's definitely a Republican district. So for her to win, generally she has to appeal to Republicans at some level to try to get them to cross over. Joe Kent, who's running against her, is a military veteran and a pretty strong Republican presence, and the Republicans were a lot less divided in the primary than they were the last go around. So I would say odds are Joe Kent wins, but again, you can't take anything for granted. It does require campaigns to actually work and get out there and do things. I do have the opinion at this point in time anyway, generally, that the Joe Kent campaign probably has a pretty well-organized operation compared to most Republican congressional races that I've seen. And I think they're a little bit better organized in how they're approaching this campaign. But that being said, the Glusenkamp campaign is going to outspend them probably 3-1 with a lot of outside money going in there. The Democrats are going to be desperate to hold on to every seat they can possibly get. In addition, although they have to try to pick some up in order to regain some kind of control in Congress, it seems unlikely right now, so I don't know but they've got to throw everything in the kitchen sink at it, and their surveys are going to show the only strength that among any significant demographic that Democrats have, it's not public safety. It's sure as heck not foreign affairs. It's not are you better off 4 years? The economy's terrible, taxes are bad, right? So there's a lot of things that I think Democrats are weak on. And finding a social issue that you can jump on that at least gives you some traction in the polls, which is abortion, is what it looks like right now. The pro-abortion angle seems to be the thing that they're going to hang their hat on. I'm not sure how well that resonates, but that's the angle that they're going at, and that's why you're seeing it there. It's all about the surveys. Let's see. I'm going to keep going down here. Questions, if you got them, send them over. Let's see. Presley, got a question here. Do you think Reichert will win the debate against Ferguson? I don't know. I mean, if Reichert wins the debate, wins, and generally people recognize that he just mopped the floor with Ferguson, that would be astounding, considering Ferguson's background as an attorney, as somebody who speaks and frankly lies a lot for a living, and has for decades now. It would be impressive if Ferguson or if Reichert was able to officially, really be generally recognized as beating Reichert or beating Ferguson in the debate. I would guess if Reichert can just hold his own and look like a more reasonable person, and clearly the better person when it comes to public safety, I think Reichert sort of wins the debate. But again, at the gubernatorial race, I've never seen, even when Inslee looked like a clown in the debates that he was in, it didn't really matter. It had zero impact. The media will just hide it. So the only way you'll ever see this debate promoted afterwards will be if Ferguson has some gotcha moment in there, and then the media will suddenly rediscover the debates and promote it a little bit. Let's see. Thunderstriker, Trump needs to downplay immigration issues as they're less urgent compared to pressing concerns like putting food on the table and inflation. Your thoughts? I don't agree with that, actually. I think that the immigration issue is far more important to larger segments of the population than most people realize, and I think Trump's got a pretty good handle on that one. I think he's right. if that was not true, you wouldn't see Kamala and Biden even suddenly pretending to care about immigration, which they clearly don't. I mean, they've done everything they can to open the borders and dump as many criminal, illegal aliens as they can into the country. So the fact that that they're suddenly pretending they care about it now clearly indicates, I think, Trump's in the right direction. But it's lumped a little bit more into public safety and long-term health of the country, and just the alarm that you'll see in population, local communities. I was in Colorado visiting my daughter at the Air Force Academy a couple weeks ago, and I can tell you that there was a distinct, palpable concern there, despite the clownish governor of that state, that these Venezuelan crime gangs were really completely hitting these stores constantly, in addition to the takeovers of apartment complexes and other things. That type of concern, public safety concern, is going to direct how people vote in many cases. But I do think the one thing you're pointing out in this question that I also agree with is the cost of living and inflation, which is really tied into that, and people's just general sense that the economy is not going well, their personal experiences, when they go to the store, as you have, as all of us have, and realize that that item now costs 2 times more than it used to. That's going to frustrate a lot of people, and that starts to drive you more crazy. Let's see. This is classic. This isn't a question, but I'll point this out. This is exactly what they do. So Spokane City Council decided to hold a closed forum during the debate on the subject of making homeless a protected class while everyone else was busy with the debate. Yeah, that's what they do. Very typical for local government to do that. Let's see. ABC, Merle Patterson, President Trump, you said something terrible. Do you have regrets? Also ABC, Kamala, President Trump said something terrible, correct? Yeah, I know. Hey, listen, the debate was all about this. It was 3-on-1. It always is, and that's what you have to expect. That was pretty funny. Presley, I don't think the debate changes anything for Trump. Or at least not much. The one thing that is going to impact people's decision between now and November is probably not going to be this debate. I don't think this is going to be something big on the radar. It is unusual, and people, I don't know why they expect this, but it was unusual to have the Biden meltdown that occurred at the last debate. That required somebody so incompetent, so senile, and so so blatantly bad. And the combination of the media and the Democrat Party establishment lying about him and hiding the truth. And then suddenly Biden was put in a format where that couldn't be hidden anymore. The blow-up was so bad that I just can't imagine that happening again, actually. That's such an unusual outcome to literally have that debate end a presidential aspiration for somebody. That just isn't, especially after they've already gotten all the votes in the primary. People should actually be asking who's running government, because clearly it's not Biden, and I don't think he ever has since he's been in there. The bigger concern and question is who the heck is running government, because it's not him. It's not Kamala. Who knows who's really running the government? And that should be a bigger concern about those of us who actually care about freedom and liberty and who care about representative forms of government. If we don't know who's really running it, then we're in trouble. Conservative thinking mom, I'm watching the debate right now. So this is the Ferguson, the gubernatorial debate, Ferguson and Reichert. And Ferguson's lying right now, which doesn't surprise me. I suppose we'll just have to do a post-gubernatorial race video and then show about all the lies that he has. Now remember, they're going to have another one in 8 days out in Spokane. Where can you watch the debate? You'll have to... I don't remember right now. You have to just Google it. You'll be able to see it's being live streamed by the media companies that are doing it. Maybe some people answered that question as it kept going down here or later. Presley had a question. This was just a follow-up on that. McKenna did well in the Inslee-McKenna debate in 2012, and he absolutely did. I mean, McKenna actually wiped the floor with Inslee. But he wasn't alone. And Inslee lied a lot back then, too. Remember Inslee, his big thing from that debate was saying that he would not raise taxes. And the first thing he did when Inslee got into office was raise taxes. You can't believe anything these guys say like that, especially when it has to do with taxes. Let's see. Here's a question here. Trump may not be the greatest debater, but he made the necessary points and appeared more serious as a leader. Winning the post-debate spin is important. Your thoughts? Yeah, I believe that. I mean, listen, the post-debate spin will matter to some extent, but a lot of times people are now preaching to the choir. So it doesn't, if you love Trump, you're going to say he did awesome. If you hate Trump, you're going to say Kamala was amazing. From a practical standpoint, just the fact that she survived a debate and didn't break out into weird cackling laughter or strange word salad stuff. I mean, obviously she had to memorize stuff to, comments, but we'll just see how it goes. I don't know that the debate's going to make too much difference there. Shouldn't Trump have mentioned Kamala's own policies? The debate was even, and he missed opportunities for significant points. Do you think he wasn't coached well enough? I don't think you can coach Trump, so I don't know what coaching Trump really looks like. I think he takes his own approach, and he's a very different person. I don't think he's, I have met plenty of politicians that are clearly empty suits and just do whatever they're told to do by their consultant. And then you wonder why they do such weird and bizarre things sometimes. And the truth is because there's nothing there. They aspire to power, and they're just simply parroting whatever they're told to parrot. I've seen that happen with politicians who get into office. They totally change the person that they were in the beginning. And so I do think that that's kind of an interesting thing to notice here as well. And Trump's not that kind of person. He clearly is his own person. I don't know how you'd coach him. Would he have done something different? I do like the fact that he was generally pretty focused. He didn't go too crazy. There was no conversation about golf scores this time, which I think was an improvement over last time. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Karen Kyle, what are the chances of Bob Ferguson getting cheated in? Well, if we leave it down to a 51 vote margin, pretty high. But the best thing to do would be to overwhelm the system with as many votes as you can, get him in early. Don't trust the post office. Try to drop them off at a best thing is to hand deliver your ballots directly to the auditor's office. Second best is to deliver it to a drop box. The worst is to use the post office. I just wouldn't trust your ballots will get to where you need them to go if you do that. Let's see. Do you think Trump walked into a trap by agreeing to appear on ABC for the first debate with Kamala? Not really. I mean, remember, this was technically the second debate for Biden, and they were just simply taking the debate rules for Biden and then swapping out the candidate and throwing Kamala in as the replacement switcheroo candidate, despite the fact she got no votes in their primary. And so essentially, you're doing the debate. You can't not do the debate. So I think that it was probably still important that they did it, but will it make that much difference? I don't know. I think other things are more likely to make a difference than that. And there are some truth about this. Bob's hostility towards small businesses. Karen, that's right. That's probably one of the worst. Let's see. Do you think that we could get more voters if we had, this is from the himself, do you think we could get more voters if we had candidates with morals and semi-intelligence? Yeah, baseline of intelligence would be pretty helpful with candidates. That's usually not so much the problem with Republican candidates' baseline intelligence. It's just irrelevant to their ability to be elected. It's helpful if they're intelligent because hopefully but that doesn't always even translate into competency when it comes to speaking in public. One thing that happens with a politician when they're running for office is that, and there's classic mistakes that Republicans make more than I see Democrats make, probably because there's a bigger machine behind the Democrat Party. It's not really the party itself. It's the bigger leftist machine that kind of controls most of what goes on over there. And they just generally winnow out their absurd candidates that are unserious earlier most of the time, and they'll find the candidates they think they can work with and throw them up, even if they have to just completely lie and pretend like there's something rational about them. And Republicans will just tend to take whoever happens to fall off the boat and just show up and run for office more often than not. And Republicans, the common mistakes that Republican candidates will make when running for local office usually is, number one, they'll be wonkish and they'll just come up with all these elaborate, I've got every answer for every policy kind of thing. And that's great, but they won't be able to connect with the voters, or they won't have any money to market themselves, or something like that. So basically the campaign's disconnected from the knowledge and skill set, or they'll have no knowledge and skill set and just run because Jesus told them to run, or somebody asked them to run. One of the worst reasons to run for office, by the way. Or whatever, just, something inspired them to jump in and they had no plan. And so then the campaign's a fiasco because they don't really have a plan to run a real race. That's usually the most common problems that you have. And if the Republican candidate doesn't have any, one thing Democrats I think are usually better at than Republicans is building up, even if it's a fake resume, but some kind of resume that shows that they're involved in the community. And I've seen them fake this many times. But sometimes it's also not fake. Sometimes they are out there. They ran for school board originally, like they were told to do. They were on school board for a number of years, and then they moved to city council, then they moved to county commissioner, and then they run for the legislature. That's kind of a real traditional path in a local government office, and that's a traditional path even to going up to Congress. It kind of lays a foundation. It allows you to build a network and a resume that's practical for the office that you're running for in general. Republicans aren't going to do that typically because they don't like government enough to live in that office their whole life. Usually they run for office because they're upset that they've run into the buzzsaw and the realities of abusive government one way or the other. So I think that if Republicans can overcome those tendencies, learn how to campaign. Probably don't use the Republican consultants that like to lose all the time, which is most of them. And then running real marketing campaigns. I mean, you really have to think about it like a marketing campaign more than anything else, and really do a good job launching yourself out there. And it just takes a lot of effort and, frankly, some skills. If you can't functionally speak in public, then please just don't run for office. You're just going to go nowhere, and it really won't matter how great you are. You can get away with that. You can get away with not being able to speak in public and probably get on the school board, maybe. But you're not going to really go anywhere in politics if you've never bothered to improve yourself and make it so that you can speak in public in some way that doesn't embarrass you. So there's some basic things running for office. How long before the first snap polls and other reactions are available? Good question. It'll probably be within the next day or so. I'd be surprised if it's not up really, really quickly. Deborah, with Seattle's homeless problem, cost of rent, et cetera, don't you think the Republican has a better chance since Democratic control has caused all the problems there? Well, I think a Republican candidate is going to have a better opportunity if they have the ability to communicate effectively how, first of all, not just the Democrats cause these problems, but how are you going to be different? And making that leap is sometimes a challenge for a lot of Republican candidates, but that would be helpful if they did it. Let's see. Trump's experience as the more senior candidate's now an advantage in the run-up to Election Day. Major stories will likely focus on Kamala. Sure, and the media is going to totally do anything they can to hurt Trump, and they're going to do anything they can to help Kamala. And that's true with all the senior alphabet soup agencies and the bureaucracy and government, senior government grifting class that are going to all jump into the group that they think is going to give them the biggest cash pile, and that's going to probably be Kamala. I'm sure. I have no idea what she's promising. So many lies from Ferguson, and we're only halfway through the debate. And man, is he obsessed with Trump. Oh, so that's interesting. If Ferguson's taking the angle that he's going to try to assign Trump to Reichert, that's an interesting angle because that'll probably be what he does. Because Trump is unlikely to win Washington State. I would say pretty much zero chance of prevailing in Washington statewide. That doesn't necessarily matter for the other Republican candidates. But what happens is somebody like Ferguson he's so uninspiring that nobody really wants to vote for him. So he has to show everybody. Certainly nobody's going to walk over glass to broken glass to vote for Ferguson. Nobody cares about him that much. So Ferguson has to go and try to convince people that he's the anti-Trump and therefore inspire the lefties who hate Trump too to come out and vote for him, because otherwise there's not much enthusiasm for a Ferguson campaign. That's an interesting thing. Here's the other advantage he potentially gets in doing that. If he can get Reichert to come out and say something disparaging about Trump, which would be easy to bait him into doing, then the Ferguson campaign can take that disparaging statement and throw it out there to the Republicans and convince Republicans not to vote for Reichert. That would probably be what he's trying to do right now. Sonera Frankenstein, did you hear Harris refer to Joe Biden as Biden? No, I didn't, but that's pretty funny. I'll have to go back and look at that. A side note, why isn't there more discussion about Trump advocating for state power while Harris is centralizing authority? Because most people don't care about that. That's why. Let's see. In your opinion, regardless of who won, it won't matter in a few weeks. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is my opinion. So it's that generally I don't think it's going to matter too much who won the race, but it's still worth it for us to see what these people are saying, even if they're lying. Let's see. Jason, what are the most important issues that should be covered in the governor's debate? Well, number one, for the election that's coming up here this November, the initiatives are clearly, the 4 initiatives that are on the ballot right now are clearly the most policy impactful issues that our state faces this year, period. They are. If passed, they will cut Washington State's budget by about $3.2 billion a year, roughly, which would destroy a lot of the grifting class and a lot of the corruption that builds up behind a lot of these tax proposals that are basically being eliminated with these initiatives or defunded, depending on which one you're looking at. And so that's a big deal, and the governor's candidates have got to weigh in on those. It's a big deal. You'll get a chance. You find out a lot about what you need to know about them just by doing that. And I know to anybody who's watching this live stream or who's a regular viewer, you're going to know where each of these guys fall. Ferguson hates the initiatives. Reichert supports the initiatives. Even if his campaign consultant is such an idiot that he put out a mailer saying that he didn't support one of the initiatives, which was weird. And that was just another example of just egregious incompetence at the consultant level that's so unforgivable that I can't believe that you would ever allow somebody like that to come anywhere near a campaign. But there we go. John Doe. Glenn, I just want to make you aware that YouTube turned off my notifications to your channel. You might want to remind your viewers to double check their subscription and notification settings. John, thank you for reminding me. I'm aware of that happening occasionally. And so that should serve as a reminder to everybody to keep making sure you check to make sure the reminders and notifications are turned on for my channel. Part of the shadow banning campaign against my channel, and I'm not alone in this, they do this to most people on the conservative side, is to eliminate most of the, it's one of the ways they shadow ban you. Still, I'm very happy to say that our channel's been increasing viewership and it's been growing, so that's still good. Let's see. We need to grab Cameo. We need to grab all our normies, pull them away from the NFL, get them registered to vote, and mail it in early if we want to see a change in this dumpster fire of a state. Or to be more accurate, get them to hand deliver, or you hand deliver it for them after they fill it out. Get that ballot delivered to the auditor's office early so that people can't play last-minute games as much. Were the moderators so biased that they leveraged every talking point in her favor, not allowing Trump to respond without interrupting him? Journalism is though dead. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. They were very biased. But anyway, that's how it is. Salty Raiders fan, thank you for what you do in the Tri-Cities. Love the Tri-Cities. I'm hoping to be out there in the next couple days. I don't know. I think it's next week, but we'll see. So I'm very glad to hear from you. Okay, here's another. I'm jumping down here a little bit. Does Sessler have a chance of winning? And so for my other viewers, this is a reference to the 4th Congressional District, which is a strong Republican district, and you have essentially 2 Republicans facing off with each other. You have Sessler and you have Newhouse, the incumbent, who voted to impeach Trump. And the challenge that the Sessler campaign has is how many Democrats, what percentage of Democrats can the Newhouse campaign turn out to vote for him versus what's the turnout of the strong Republicans in that district who don't like Newhouse or who love Trump to turn out and vote for him. And that's really the question. And that's purely going to be a turnout model. Sessler's a good chance of winning, but there's no guarantees. I mean, no matter what, that's going to be a Republican district. You got 2 Republicans running against each other, but that's where it is. Let's see. I'm getting close to wrapping this up here, guys, because let's see. Thunderstriker, I mentioned this earlier. Yes, I got to ask you, I really wish Trump had been more unifying at the end and put aside all the issues he faced tonight. He's the candidate for the people. Am I right? I thought Trump miss an opportunity with a closing statement that would have been more effective. That's my opinion. But let's see. Ben Garrett, Ferguson just said Reichert has a signed MAGA hat in his home. Bob is even more nuts than I thought. Yeah. So Ferguson's spying on Reichert's home. Yeah. Apparently Ferguson has a camera in Dave Reichert's house, just like he plans to spy on you. Well, he is a weirdo. There's no doubt about it. Barron, I haven't seen Dave Reichert's new ads. I don't even know what they look like. I'll have to look them up. So I just think that's very funny. Let's see. Bad budget resume. So did Dave really have a bad budget resume? I'm not sure. And so I'm assuming you're referencing something from the gubernatorial debate, which I'll have to go back and watch. Salty Raiders fan, why do you have such a negative view about the post office? And I'll tell you why. Because in the last 3 years now, I've been approached by half a dozen directly whistleblowers from the post office all over Washington State. And what they have to share with me is shocking, just how much problems they have. Anybody that knows anything about what's going on at the post office is aware of this. They are. And if they have any awareness of what's going on in the post office and they tell you there's no problems there, they're lying, flat out lying. The agency is in disarray. And the problem, that doesn't have anything to do with the elections. It's just the indirect impact on mail-in voting when you depend and outsource all your voting to this agency that is having all these constant problems. And some of them are labor problems. Some of them are how they treat employees. One of the things that a post office can apparently do is if you're assigned a route, and they can force you to do somebody else's route as well, even if you don't want to. So it's against your will, forcing you to go out and do this. Well, here's what happens. You got kids or parents that have to pick up kids from daycare. Something else is going on. They're frustrated because they do their whole route, they come back, now they have to do another route because somebody didn't show up or they didn't hire enough workers, whatever the reason. And so there's frustration that builds up on that. And so when the choice is to pick up your kid from daycare or deliver the mail, you'll basically do what has happened frequently, is they'll pitch the mail in the dumpster and go pick up their kid, right? This is the kind of stuff that's happened in the post office. And if it just so happens to be the wrong time of year, it's not just your bills and the missing grandma letter that you didn't get and the postcards you thought you were going to have and a bunch of junk mail you don't miss. It's also your ballot that you don't get. This is happening. And new employees that are being hired by the post office, this has been repeatedly told me by almost everyone I've met who works there, they're not being trained properly. Half the new employees that come in don't even know what a ballot is. And so they'll throw them in the shredder accidentally. They have these boxes. They don't shred them immediately, but they put them in these boxes, and then eventually they shred it. It's designed for bulk mail that doesn't have a deliverable address, and they aren't going to return to sender. And so they'll throw them in just thinking they're junk mail. There's plenty of examples I have of them stamping the wrong date, not because it was some kind of grand George Soros plan, but just simply because the guy was probably coming off a bender, was still drunk at the office. Somebody gave him a stamp. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. Ka-chunk. And just stamp the wrong date on it. That's the problem. The post office has problems, and that problem translates into a disaster when you've hitched the wagon of your entire election system to the functioning ability of a bureaucracy that's in decay. And that's why I have a problem with the post office, and it comes directly from the source. Plus, I've inspired postmaster inspector generals that come back investigations into problems at the Seattle Post Office. First one I did was in 2019. They came back and said, absolutely, yeah, we can't figure out what they did with your mailer and why it didn't go out. And in fact, they sent it out after the election was over. So sorry, man, we're just screw-ups. That's why. Let's see. I'm going to see if there's any other last questions. Let's see. Michael Case, not all postal areas have postmasters like Bremerton. Yeah, and I'm not sure whether it matters whether they have a postmaster or not. I'm just telling you that the working environment has delivered a subpar performance in their ability to get mail, and inevitably that's what happens. Let's see. What truly meaningful things can the average politically ignorant person do to help Reichert? This is a great question. And in fact, I think I'm going to end on it because that's the last question I have here. I think there's some more that are popping up late, but I am 12 minutes past the time that I'd like to have done this tonight. So I would say that the average person, if you want to vote for Reichert or any other candidate, what you need to do, and you want to make a difference, that's all, I would focus on finding 10 or 15 apathetic people around you that you can influence and convince them to not just ignore their ballot, but when it gets in, call them, get them to fill it out, and help them. In fact, in our state, this is perfectly legal. It's illegal in other states, but our state allows for you to, once they've filled out their ballot and they've got it in their envelope and they've signed the envelope, that's important, then you can take that down and hand deliver it for them directly to the auditor's office and make sure it gets there. That's what I would start to do. Tell them why you're voting for Reichert or whatever candidate you're supporting. If they don't have an opinion, you could influence and change the way that they might otherwise vote, or the fact that they may not vote at all otherwise. Help be involved. Help and do it directly, and try to influence 10 to 12 people around you. Most of us can do that. So by doing that, you'll make a big impact. All right, guys. Yes, I would say somebody brought up another point. The government is a mountain of corruption surrounded by an ocean of incompetence. That is my definition of bureaucracy in most governments today. One of the reasons why I want to shrink government and make it more realistic to have a liberty and freedom agenda in our state and our country. So with that, guys, thanks for joining me so late. This is an unusual late live stream since I had timed this just perfectly with the presidential primary. Next time, I will not interrupt the governor's primary, so I hope that that's going to be a debate that most of us can watch live when it does happen out in Spokane. For now, I'll have to watch this one after the fact and see what I missed in the gubernatorial debate. For the rest of you out there, feel free to jump over and watch that debate when you're done. A lot of people logged on to the live stream, about 1,300 or so, if I'm reading that correct. So thanks for joining me tonight and watching. Watch for my videos. I've got a couple of them coming out this week. And I will see you Friday if you are at the Washington State Republican Dinner in Bellevue. Thank you guys so much for watching. Lots of good questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to them all. Never forget, 9/11 anniversary is tomorrow. And with that, just look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, as I always say, the future does belong to those who show up. Please make sure you show up this year.